Mike Carr, blue, blue, Mike Carr. Contestant, are you ready?
I am ready. She was blue, not just her fingernails and her closed eyelids, but also the hue of her cheek and the curve of her shoulder. Her lips were also blue. I could tell as I moved my mouth away from her mouth. And then she opened her eyes and she looked at me and she said, "You know, you're not a bad kisser." Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and guests, Maria Kirkland was born with a heart condition called stenosis that left her blood under-oxygenated and left her very pale skin a bluish color. I had known her as long as I could remember, and I thought she was just so cool because I had all kinds of friends, all shades of brown and black, but she was my only friend who was blue. We'd become fast friends because she loved to laugh at everything and every moment. We talked about the guys that she was dating, and she talked to me about the girls that I was dating. And then about 3 or 4 times in the 17 years that I knew her, we found ourselves in the shadow of a building or a bus or a birch tree. Her small chin rose toward mine, and she kissed me. And I was glad to kiss her back. On this particular day, though, she was blue. As I rounded the corner at school, it was odd to see Maria in a sad mood, but I could tell something was wrong. She said to me, "Mike, I'm going to have another surgery." When I asked for what, her eyes cut over at me and she said, "I'm going to have a lip replacement because you're such a bad kisser." And I laughed. But as I laughed, she stared at the ground for a long moment. And then it was gone, and she was sunny again. And we started talking about the night before in front of her very conservative grandmother at dinner. She had gotten all of her words mixed up and had accidentally said a very bad word in front of her very conservative grandmother. And I laughed so hard I blew milk out my nose. I didn't see Maria for the next several days. I was sitting in Latin class, and a note came to my teacher that my mother was here and wanted to see me. That's weird. But I got out of class and I headed toward the principal's office, and my mother met me halfway. "Mike," she said, "Maria died in heart surgery this morning." All of a sudden, my mother's voice sounded like it was in a tunnel. It was blue, the sky, the day of Maria's funeral. I remember thinking how wrong it was that the most beautiful day of the year waited to show itself until the darkest day of the year. All of these wonderful things in the chapel were being said about my friend, but as I sat at the back, I felt numb because there was this portrait up at the front of the chapel that Maria's family had had painted of her. In it, she was all beautiful and blonde and pink, not blue at all. I got so angry that I ran out of the back of the chapel and just exited, going into the graveyard, running among the graves, looking at all of them and seeing none of them. Why did I even care about some silly pink portrait? I wouldn't know the answer until I went into the mountains a few months later, just to clear my head. In the clear mountain air, I could just smell it. And as I sat there on the side of a mountain with my head in my hands, staring down at dirt, I began to realize that the reason that pink portrait made me so angry was it just wasn't her. But I realized something more important. Maria always knew she would die at a young age. It was apparent to me now at little things that she said along the way. And I realized also that she had embraced that reality and decided not just to exist within its constraints, but to truly live. And that's why every time we were all together, she would say, what more joy or excitement or laughter could be squeezed into this very precious moment in which we were standing? And why not? She might literally die tomorrow. I thought Maria was so cool because she was blue, when in actuality it was because she turned up the volume on experiences for all of us whenever she was around. Experiences like kissing as many boys in her high school class as she possibly could. I was aghast that I was not the only one. As I sat on the side of that mountain, I felt my spirit move on to a new path. One in which I wanted to be like Maria, where I would put more life into my life. And so even today, all this many years later, whenever I'm in a long line with my kids, I will stand there and I will look at them, and then in a very loud voice, I will say, "Oh, Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain." And my kids will start crawling inside their clothes, trying to hide from me because they're so embarrassed, and I laugh. And I think about Maria every time. And so I have a question for you. Who is the Maria in your life? Who in your life brings you life? Can I ask you to do two things? This weekend, tomorrow, would you please text that person or call them and say you appreciate them, because you never know when you have people in your life. And then secondly, would you be a Maria for someone else? Because in this day, when the most we can do is just look at how many new COVID cases there are and how many people are dying, you have the opportunity to turn someone else's gray skies into blue, because everyone deserves to have more joy, more laughter, more excitement, more life poured into their life. Madam Toastmaster.